There we go. Now, let's turn the lights off. That way it shows up a little bit easier. That would be good. Thank you. I do have a lamp I'm going to put back in this corner, so that way we get a little bit more light in the corner, but helps us be able to see that better. Now, let's talk geography here. This is Unit 1, Chapter 1, in case you want to keep this labeled and keep it straight. So we begin here with answering the question, what's geography, in Section 1. Comes from a Greek word, geographia. There you know. There you go. Now you know some Greek. So you can see up there that I've defined that. It means to describe the earth. So it means to describe the earth. Now, as you're taking notes, you will find that I will put things up on the screen that are really important. I will generally continue to talk about that topic and describe it. And so what I want you to be doing is that I want you to be writing this in your own words so that you will better understand it when you come back to read it later in preparation for a quiz or a test. If you copy my stuff word for word or you write down everything that I'm saying, then it's not going to make as much sense than if you were to put this in your own words. So you feel free to abbreviate, feel free to change the words that I use up there. Don't feel like you have to write it down exactly that same way. Do it any way that you like. The important thing is that it makes sense to you. Okay? Everybody with me? And that should go for most of your classes too, by the way. That's just a note-taking skill. Now, here's a good example of it. Now, you can write down this textbook definition if you really want to, but it is already in your textbook. So if you need this definition, you can get there. If you are doing what I just instructed you to do, you are rewriting this in a phrase that makes sense, probably a few less words. So it's a study of the distribution and interaction of physical and human features on the earth. How might we rephrase that? How might we rephrase the definition on the screen? The study of the distribution and interaction of physical and human features on the earth. I'm bored just reading it. Study of culture. Good. I like that. Okay. We might want to add to that the interaction of cultures. Sure. Culture is definitely part of it. We also don't want to miss out on the physical part of it, but we could say it's the study of cultures and physical features of Earth. So you put it in a phrase that makes sense to you so you will remember what is geography. What do we study? So in your homework, you guys studied the 5 themes of geography. And they are in no particular order. First one is location. And the question that you should ask when you are dealing with location is, where is this located? So essentially that's one of the things that the GPS on your phone is going to do. It's going to find out, where are you located? So how are you going to describe that? So if I were to ask you right now, where are you located, what would you tell me? Somebody offer an example. Where are you located? I've already heard a lot from Mac. I appreciate your participation, but let me get somebody else involved here. Right now, where are you? Faith Christian School. Okay. Somebody give me a different description of where are you right now. Don't use Faith Christian School. Lafayette, Indiana. Okay, that's another description of location. Somebody else give me a different one without using the ones already been given. The United States. Yes, you are in the United States. How about another one? About a mile from Meyer. Okay, now we're changing things just a little bit, but that is also a location. Good. How else?
On the earth.
You are on the earth. Good. All of those are descriptions telling us where you are. Are some of them more specific than others? Yeah, absolutely. Because if you just say, yeah, I'm on earth, come find me, come over to my place. I'm here on earth. Even if you said, hey, come on over, we'll study geography because it's such an awesome class. I'm in Lafayette, Indiana. Come find me. I'm not going to be able to find your house. And so you've got to be a little bit more specific. So there's two different types of location, and both of them were described in your examples here. Can anybody tell me what is absolute location talking about? From your reading, Jim?
It's the exact location of
Okay, it's the exact location, but how do we know the exact location? Give me some more specifics. Okay, you're going to be using latitude and longitude for absolute location. You're going to be using latitude and longitude. We're going to come back, we'll talk about those two terms here a little bit later, but you're going to be very specific to a pinpoint spot on the globe. Now, you could also use another way to describe absolute location besides latitude and longitude. How else could you get an exact location of where you are at right now and give that information to somebody that had no clue where you were? An address. So we have taken the latitude and longitude and we have made it even more specific to a mailing address so that somebody could find out where you were located. That is absolute location. So contrast with me here, what does relative location mean? Is that where your grandparents are? Aunts and uncles? Thanksgiving? Said my relative location? That's a bad pun, people. It's okay to laugh. All right, go ahead.
location of an object in relation to other objects or places.
So you're going to position yourself, you're going to describe your location based on another object or landmark. So when we said that we are about a mile from Meyer, that is relative location. I prefer to say that we're about a mile from Starbucks. But you can say Meyer if you're allowed to. Copper Moon's there too, and that's good. So about a mile from coffee, high quality coffee. Overpriced coffee, some might say. Yeah, but it's still good nonetheless. So that's relative location. You are going to describe your location in relation to something else that people would recognize. So right here, we're about a mile from Meyer. We are across the parking lot from Faith Community Center. That would be relative location. We are north of Indianapolis, maybe a little bit northwest. Those are all relative locations. And so when you are giving directions to people, how many of you are a street sign? I'm going to give you if I'm going to give you step-by-step directions to my house, I'm going to give you streets, street names. How many of you are that way? 2 or 3. How many of you are going to tell me to turn at the Starbucks and you're going to turn by Target and you're going to turn by Meyer and you're going to use that type of phrasing when you tell me how to get to your house? A majority of you. Because you are describing relative location and landmarks. You're not giving me absolute location. Those of you that are more street names are probably a little bit more on the absolute location type of mindset. Not that either is bad, and neither one is right or wrong. It's just a different way of describing things. So it is really important that you understand the difference between absolute and relative location when it comes to the 5 themes of geography. And then we talk about place. And the question you should ask here is, what's it like? What are the physical features? Are there mountains? Are there lakes? Is it next to the ocean? Is it hot? Is it cold? How should I dress for this place? Those are the descriptions that you will get in the place category. And those are important things to know, especially if you're going on vacation. Have any of you ever gone on a trip and been totally unprepared for the weather? Okay, some of you have. Anybody care to give an example real quick? Abby?
I went to Germany in the middle of the summer once, and I was thinking it was going to be warm, but it was like 50 degrees the whole time.
Yes,
and it was
okay.
miserable.
Awesome on going to Germany. That's pretty cool. And second of all, I have done that same thing, thinking I was going to be in a place that was going to be warm, and it turned out to be cold. What else?
I went to Aruba last October, and I brought a couple pairs of jeans and not many shorts.
Ooh, yeah. So if you would have understood the climate better, it probably would have helped you out in packing all of that. The United States made a pretty infamous decision during World War II to go across Europe, and many of our soldiers were not well prepared for the climate. And so the Germans did the same thing. They made a very miscalculated mistake doing that going into Russia. But a lot of our soldiers struggled through the winter. You could even go to the Civil War and look at the Southern Confederacy, and they would have been better off dressing for the cold, harsh winters of Northern Virginia. But that's place. Now, when we talk about region, when we look at region, we're trying to find out what are the similarities or differences from one place to another. How are places similar or different? So we're trying to find shared characteristics. How many of you have lived outside of Lafayette, Indiana at some point in your life? So you have not lived here your entire life. Okay. Of those of you that just raised your hand, has anybody lived in a similar type climate or landscape as Lafayette, Indiana? Where did you live before? Chicago. Okay, so you would find that the region of Chicago is very similar to Lafayette, Indiana, because landscape and climate are not too different. Okay, anybody else other than Chicago? Where else have you lived?
South Bend.
South Bend, Indiana. Okay, so we're not too far out of this. It would be in a similar region. Good. Where else? Regina? Okay. Anybody further than 1 or 2 states away? Where have you lived? Oklahoma. Okay. Is the landscape and the climate similar to what you experience here? No. So Oklahoma would be a different region. Okay? While you might find some similarities, you are definitely going to have to buy different clothing if you're going to live there long term. Same thing when you come up here. Where? Maryland. Okay, yeah. Again, climate's going to be different there. A lot more humidity from what I understand. So 2 years ago, well, I guess it would be a year and a half ago, we moved from Georgia. Georgia is not the same region. You do not have the flat land like you do here, and you have very tall pine trees that provide a lot of shade because you will have warm temperatures all the way up through November. I have a picture on my Twitter account, just a little plug for my Twitter, which I don't use as much as I used to, of my sons and I playing tackle football on Thanksgiving Day, and it is a warm, sunny, 65-degree day on Thanksgiving that we are playing out in the yard. You will probably not experience that here. I am accustomed to about 2 months of winter. You would get December and January, it would be really cold, and by February you would start to thaw out, and when I mean really cold, it means it might get down to 25 or 30, maybe. And one of the culture shocks for us was that when we first moved down to Georgia from Wisconsin, we didn't know that the mornings were really cold, and the afternoons would get really warm, and then the evenings would cool off again. And that's usually during the fall and the spring. So we'd show up in the morning, it'd be like 40 degrees, we'd have these big jackets on, and I'd go out of the building after teaching most of the day in the afternoon expecting it to still be cold, and it'd be 65. And I'm wearing my big winter jacket. And then it would cool off again at night, way down to the 40s or 50s. So it's important to know how they are similar or how they're different, and us having a picture of where we are helps us to compare and contrast to other parts of the world. Movement involves how people, goods, ideas move from one location to another. So we're talking about just transporting all the difficulties that go into organizing, transporting any of those items, people, goods, and ideas. Obviously, technology has made that much easier in the last 100 years. It's much simpler to be able to travel to other parts of the world today than what it was even 50 years ago. And so we're going to look at some of those things. Now, each of these 5 themes are going to be evident in the chapters as we read and as we discuss. So it may not necessarily give you the title of movement or human environment interaction, but I want you to understand these 5 themes so that if I were to give you a country and say you are going to research the country of Argentina, and I want you to talk about each of the 5 themes of geography, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You could describe their location, their place, their region, their movement, and this last one here, human environment interaction. We are looking at how people relate to the world and the environment around them. That one hopefully is pretty self-explanatory in the title, human environment interaction. But we do a lot of modification to our environment. We do a lot of things to change it to make it hopefully better. Unless you talk to Al Gore. And if you don't know who Al Gore is, he is a major environmentalist who is saying that we are killing the earth by our interaction with it. So we need to go green on everything. Now, we're not going to debate Al Gore here today, but we do need to be careful on how we use the resources that God's given us so that we don't waste them and that we don't abuse them. Anybody know what the Dust Bowl is? The Dust Bowl of the 1930s in the United States. No, it's not, but that would be actually more exciting. What is it?
Isn't it there's this huge dust storm that
Yes. So in the 1930s, there was a drought in the Midwest, and that drought caused a massive dust storm to sweep over the middle United States to the point where people died because they inhaled so much dust, and people died because they were outside of their home and they couldn't find their way back. It was so dark and so dusty that they ended up getting lost and wandered out in the middle of nowhere and never return. So it was pretty nasty. Come to find out, we caused it. Farmers that did not know how to properly irrigate and did not know how to properly tend to their fields, they cut down a lot of the natural tall grass that was there that was meant to hold down a lot of the soil, and they tilled it all up and they planted crops, which worked for a year or two. But because they messed with the environment, it caused all that loose topsoil to get blown away when the winds came across the open prairies. Well, we know that now, but we didn't know that back then. So, up at the top here, I have those five that we just talked about, just as a reminder here. But it's important to note, and this is not something you necessarily need to take down in your notes, but I just want you to keep in mind that each of these 5 themes are present in every society somewhere. Sometimes you got to look for them, and sometimes you got to dig a little bit deeper. And they're not always right out there in front. And so this is something that I want you to be searching for as we are studying different cultures and countries. And so we do need to search for the connection as we go through it. And again, this is not stuff that you necessarily need to copy down. You might want to just write a note that these 5 themes are always found in the countries, so just look for them. Okay? A lot of these things help shape our society today, and they all affect you. So again, addressing the issue of why do we study this? Why do we need to know it? Because our environment affects us. The way that we care for our environment. Now, I'm not a tree hugger, and if you are, I'm not going to condemn you, but I'm not going to go out there and protest people who are cutting down trees. I do think, however, that we ought to be careful about the trees that we cut down and how we do them. Because I care about breathing. I care about life and oxygen, and if you know anything about science, trees provide that oxygen for us. And so if we cut down all the trees, if you watch the Lorax, you're going to run out of resources. How many of you have seen the Lorax? Okay, for the rest of you, that reference just went flat on the back of the wall and y'all missed it. It's a really good reference too, by the way. So If you've seen a Lorax, they cut down all the trees, they can't make any of the needs, and his business goes out of business, and he basically ruins society. There's a lot of environmental undertones in that movie that most kids don't pick up on. But if you go back and you watch it and think about, all right, what's the underlying message here? It's big time conservation, big time go green in that movie. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. My kids have watched it, and so that's just life. So we think about our belief system. For us, religion might be a big part of that. Understanding the religious culture to the different people groups that we study. So in our society, in our culture, there are certain ways that people expect you to live out your faith. It is perfectly acceptable within the rules of the city to build a church building and to go worship freely. In other cultures, it's not. And so it's important to understand that. Customs, and this is just way of life, how things are done, how people live on a daily basis, as well as our government. So every culture's got their own way of governing themselves. Sometimes as a dictator, sometimes as a president, sometimes it is a king or queen, sometimes it is a tribal leader. So everybody has their own system of government, and it might be very different than what we are used to. And then morals. So one of the things that is not culturally acceptable is for men to have more than one wife in our culture. In other cultures, that may not be the case. So certain parts of Africa, for men to have multiple wives is widely acceptable and usually encouraged, because then you can have a better chance of producing strong male heirs to carry on your family legacy and to carry on your family business, which is generally dictated by labor. And so that's part of their moral culture. Now, we have a biblical standard, which we would view that through much differently. But understanding the morality of the culture may be a little bit different. Now, when we talk about location, and we mentioned absolute location, we said that there's a few different ways that we can describe absolute location. So to be able to describe absolute location, we need to be able to divide the hemisphere into two halves. So the hemisphere divides the earth in two different sections. It's like we take a basketball, we split it in half. So we're going to split it north to south or east to west. Which would be the best way to do it? How many of you want me to split it east to west? You want me to split it across the side? In fact, let me grab a basketball and show you. This is my kid's money bank. Yes, I took it. Actually, it belongs to me, but they like to put money in it. They like to play with it. So here is the earth. Would it be better to split it this way, east to west, sideways, or split it this way? How many of you would say you'd rather split it east to west and split it this direction? How many of that would make more sense to you? I would rather split it this way and it would make more sense to you. Okay, how many didn't vote? You need to take my government class. We need to talk about voting and how it is a privilege and we need to vote. So, none of you are wrong except for those of you who didn't vote. Then maybe you might be wrong. But we can divide it either direction. But the debate was, well, which way is best? And so if we were going to divide it north to south, we're going to have a northern half and a southern half that we divide along the equator. So the equator is the one that goes this direction, straight across the front here. And it's important that you link the equator in the eastern and western direction, but you are going to end up with a northern half and a southern half. I don't know if I can get this apart. There it goes. So this is the division. You may want to sketch a picture or something to remind yourself. It's also in your book. But if we're going to divide along the equator, it's going to divide this way. Okay? Now, what's a dividing line if we are to go the other direction? We're to split it this way. What's that one called?
The prime meridian.
Prime meridian, good. So prime meridian is the other way that we can divide. And so we're going to take our globe and we're going to split it in half this way. So we have an eastern and a western hemisphere. Provide us with an eastern and a western hemisphere. So helping us understand these terms, or as we understand these terms, it will help us to better understand absolute location. Within the equator and prime meridian, we have lines that help us to center in on specific absolute locations. The lines of latitude are the ones that run parallel to the equator. So this is bringing in math. I know you all thought, man, I don't have to do math and geography. Yeah, you do. So parallel term, what does that mean? What's parallel? Good. So they're side by side. They're never going to run into each other. Are they going, if we're going to say then the lines of latitude are parallel to the equator, are these lines going to be going this direction or this direction? And I want you to think about it before you answer. And I want you to indicate with your hand, if you think that they're going this direction, I want you to show me this way. If you think they're going this direction, I want you to show me this way. And I want you all to vote. Even if you have to glance at the person next to you. Okay? None of these. None of these. All right, I'm looking for, we're going this way, we're going this way. Okay. So, equator. Which direction is the equator going? It's going right across here. It's going horizontal. So if we're going parallel and the lines will never intersect, then that means the latitude lines have to be this direction. On my map here, you can faintly see the lines of latitude right here. Boom, 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 boom. All the way up and down. These lines will never run into each other. They go straight across the globe. Okay? Because they're parallel to the equator. Going the other direction, the longitude lines. These are parallel to the prime meridian. So if we understand the prime meridian to be going from North Pole to South Pole, these lines are going to be parallel here, 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 all the way across. This is about the location of prime meridian too, by the way. I was looking to see if this map gives us degree marks. I don't think it does. So when we do absolute location, we are looking for the point at which they intersect, where they meet. Are we supposed to go to lunch now?
Yes.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Yes. Thank you for letting me know. Head to lunch.